Today I want to talk about the arms race. Now, I have to apologize in advance. The audio might not be so great because I've tried to connect my Rode microphone, but I'm still in the infancy stages of my content creation. So excuse the audio if it's not too great. It's something that I'm working on, and hopefully we'll get some crisp and quality audio in the very, very near future. The arms race. Some of you may know this term, some of you may not know this term. And something that came to mind when I saw this new social media from Meta called Thread, which is meant to be the equivalent of a Twitter. I started to see it on some profiles and I thought, what's this? I click on it and it's a new social media. And it seems that we have the dynamic of the arms race here. What is the arms race? Well, the arms race is everyone's doing something. Now I've got to do something as well to keep up, even though the net outcome is zero or negligible. And obviously it was originally a military term that was used to describe the dynamic between the Soviet Union and the US, where they were building up their arms, and spending all this money, increasing their military expenditure. What's the net balance? It's just an arms race where you're doing it, I'm doing it. No one's actually benefiting anything in terms of productivity, real results. And there's always a benefactor in an arms race. In the case of the original term, the original situation would have been the arms manufacturers. They make a lot of money. But it's actually a dynamic that it's so perverse and so common. You'll find it in many different fields and spheres of human activity. And one of the main ones of that is university, especially in the Western world, but all across the world now. Everybody has got a degree, so now I have to get a degree. It's true. Getting a degree does give you a slightly higher paying job than someone who's not a graduate, but when you consider the costs, the time and money invested, it kind of balances out, and it's again, the net result is a negligible or even zero. If everybody's getting a degree, then you getting a degree is not going to differentiate yourself. It becomes very competitive. You do it, I do it, everyone's doing it, even though there's no actual results. So the thread is something, what I think it's called Thread, it's something that I was reminded of the arms race. Why? Because it seems to be just that. We're getting more and more and more and more of whatever it is that we're doing, social media or clothing or equipment, and I'm going to get onto some of those. But what's the actual net results? What are we actually achieving? At every step considered, it seems like it's a reasonable choice. But when you look at the bigger picture, what are we actually achieving by just loading up and loading up and loading up? Well, it's actually not much. So the first example I gave you of the underlying pernicious, insidious dynamic of the arms race is the university. The next one, academia, scientific journals and papers. So roughly 2 million academic papers are published every single year. 100 years ago, during Einstein's time, it wasn't even 1% of that amount of 2 million, even though that was Einstein's time and it was a time of scientific breakthrough. So fast forward 100 years, we have so many more papers being published, but the scientific breakthroughs have remained at a constant rate. So all these academics and scientists are publishing these journals and publishing these papers. What are we actually achieving in terms of actual scientific achievement and breakthrough? It's a dynamic that it's very present in academia. And people are awarded, people are promoted on the basis of how many papers they produce and how many times those papers are cited. And who's really benefiting the most? It's going to be those journals, right? So remember, there's always a benefactor. In the first case, that would be the actual university, this business that's creating this underlying dynamic of an arms race that extracts money and debt and time from students who get sold a dream into thinking that they're going to be well off and successful and achieve their highest dreams by going to university. Little do they know that's actually an arms race. Next, the workplace. If you work a corporate job or any sort of 9 to 5, your colleagues work longer hours, so now you have to work longer hours. Your colleagues do this, now you have to copy your colleagues, and then someone else is doing it. You feel the need to keep up and keep up and keep up. But at some point you go beyond reasonable productivity and it just becomes an underlying arms race where there's so much input but not much output. So you've got to be aware of that. Material possessions, that could be anything. That can be stuff that you buy that you don't need. It could be the size of your house. You know, you get a house, someone else gets a bigger house, and then the houses get bigger and bigger and bigger. You're still going to sleep once and sleep in one room and use so much of that house. You see what I mean? And material, or the horsepower of your car. You know, I've got a 500 horsepower car. That's more than enough for me. But my mate or some guy I see has got 600 or 700. Now we have to keep increasing and increasing and increasing. What's the actual net outcome? It's just madness, it's insanity, it's an arms race. So let's talk about the solution. Well, the first solution, you're very well on your way to knowing the solution to the arms race, because the first step is to actually identify what an arms race is. Don't think that the arms race is just something that belongs to the 20th century. Oh, it's just history. It was an old dynamic or a way of describing the power relations between the US and the USSR. Not at all. The arms race, as I said, is a pernicious dynamic that manifests itself in so many different spheres, both in professional life and private life. So the first step, as I said, is to identify the arms race. Don't look at things that you're doing just on their own, in small steps, you know, in small actions. Look at the bigger picture. What is it actually going to do for me? How competitive is the industry or sphere of activity am I entering? Would an increase, slight or large, in a specific possession or a job or a role or anything that you're doing actually going to bring me satisfaction and the results that I really want, or am I just doing it because everybody else is doing it? You know, that's something that you have to think about. So yeah, the solution, as I said, is just to keep an open mind. It's to be aware and present of all the actions that you're taking. Are you taking them because they align with your objectives, your purpose and your goals? Or are you taking those actions because you've fallen victim to the dynamic of the arms race? So that's just something to be aware of. I definitely spotted that with this new thread thing. So to wrap up, do we really need this thread thing? You know, are they? Is every time they introduce a new social media or a new product or a new, I think, are we? People start doing it, so then you feel the need to do it. Remember, guys, an important principle to have in your life is that less is more. It's not always about more, 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 more. And on the contrary, the more you reduce, the better it is. Less is more is going to lead to more tranquility and inner peace. And isn't that what we're after all?